Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about right to farm or right to harm. But before we get into the discussion, let's take a look at a movie with John Eckert which was a talk that he gave at the conference, How We Eat, How We Farm, Perspectives on Food and Farming in the 21st Century, which was put together by the Humane Society of the United States and Missouri's Food for America.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I'm going to keep my remarks very short because everybody up here has something important to say. I'm going to make sure that they have time to say it and we have time for discussion left over. We're talking about perspectives on food and farming in the 21st century. And the conclusion that I have come to is that change in the American food system is no longer optional. It is an absolute necessity. I've come to the conclusion, my truth is that the current food system is not sustainable. It's not meeting the needs of most of the people of this country and of the world certainly today, and it certainly is not leaving equal or better opportunities for those of the future, and that's what sustainability is about. Meeting the needs of the present without compromising opportunities for those of the future. As I said, it's my truth, and nobody on the panel needs to feel obligated to agree with me on that or anybody else. And if your truth is different than that, that's all right with me as long as you know why you believe. I say my truth with conviction because I do know why I believe what I believe, regardless of whether you agree with it and regardless of whether I change my mind. If it's my truth, you need to know a little bit about my story. I grew up on a small dairy farm not very far from here, about 7 miles outside the town of Conway. I got all my education at the University of Missouri, my BS, MS, and PhD degrees in agricultural economics. Between my undergraduate and graduate work, I worked for 3 years with Wilson Packing Company, the 4th largest meat packer in the country at that time. I spent 30 years in 4 land-grant universities, North Carolina State, Oklahoma State, University of Georgia, University of Missouri. The first half of that academic career, I was an extension livestock marketing specialist. So I certainly have nothing against agriculture, nothing against animal agriculture. I really believe in that. But during the 1980s, what I still refer to as the farm financial crisis for various reasons I can go into later if you want to, I came to the conclusion that the kind of agriculture and economics I had been taught and I had been teaching simply wasn't working. I'd been going telling farmers out here that farming had to be a business, not just a way of life, and that farmers either had to be prepared to get big or get out of agriculture. During the 80s, I come to the conclusion that that kind of agriculture certainly wasn't good for farmers because for our farmers to get bigger, it meant that somebody had to fail, and a lot of farmers were failing during the 1980s, during the farm financial crisis. It wasn't good for those farmers. It wasn't good for the rural communities that depended upon those farm families, not just for business on Main Street, but for the churches and schools and everything that were closing at that time. It wasn't good for the land that was being destroyed by erosion and pollution and degradation of the air and water with agricultural chemicals and biological waste. It wasn't good for the rural economies. Only later would I come to the conclusion that it wasn't good for the American consumer. For the past 25 years, I've been working on what I call sustainable agriculture. I came to Missouri to work on sustainable agriculture. We used to have a balanced farming program here. Made a lot of sense. It's about sustainability. It says, take care of the land. Take care of the land and pass it on as good or better than you found it. Take care of your family. Be good for your family. Be good for your community. Be good neighbors. And make a good living on the farm. Ecological, social, economic, those are the 3 pillars of sustainable agriculture. That's what I believe in, and that's what I promote today. I've come to the conclusion that industrial agriculture model was an absolute failure. See, what we were going to do is we're going to make agriculture efficient so we can bring down food costs. We were going to make good food affordable for everyone. It didn't work. We have more people in this country, percentage-wise, that are food insecure and hungry today than we had back in the 1960s before all of this nonsense began. Over 15% of the people in food insecure homes, almost a quarter of our children, live in food insecure homes today. It didn't feed the hungry. And the people that can afford to eat, particularly lower income food, levels, the food they're eating is making them sick. We have an epidemic of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure and various forms of cancer that are associated with the American diet. While we've cut the percentage of income spent on food in this country in half, we've doubled the amount that we spend on health care. We're spending almost twice as much on health care today as we spend for our food. We simply cannot afford the high cost of more cheap food. The problem is in industrial agriculture is we've turned our farms into factories without roofs and we've turned our feedlots into biological assembly lines. It's been an absolute failure. The alternative food system that we're talking about today, the local food system, is a direct consequence of growing public concerns about the consequences of industrial food system. You see a big propaganda campaign that's going on today to try to defend industrial agriculture against those growing concerns. And if you look at the focus of the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance website, you can see where they feel it's most vulnerable and where the concerns are. They focus on food safety issues, on environment, on welfare, animal welfare, and on prices and choices. What they say is the farmers out here today are producing good, safe food, that our food system safe and healthful. They say that the farmers and the industrial agriculture stewards of the environment, that they care and take good care of the animals, that they're providing affordable food for everyone. It couldn't be farther from the truth, the reality. The reality is, in terms of the food safety issues, food recalls on E. coli, salmonella have become almost routine. They hardly even report them anymore. You can go on the USDA or FDA website and you can see them, but they're becoming routine. And in addition to that, roughly half of the recent studies or more of the bacteria they're finding in large quantities in the food that's in the grocery market today is antibiotic resistance, which leads to MRSA, which now kills more people in this country than AIDS does. That's what the veggie laws were all about, trying to keep people from telling the truth about what's going on with food safety. Respect to the environment, they're not protectors of the environment. EPA reports that there's been 35,000 miles of streams in 19 Midwestern states that are polluted by agricultural chemicals. They talk about the modern manure management plans and modern waste treatment facilities being better than the independent family farms. We've had a threefold increase in the amount of streams and waterways in Iowa that have been impaired by agricultural waste since we started moving the hogs out of family farms and into the industrial operations. They're not environmentally sound. Animal welfare, there's simply too many animals in too small places to even give the animals any concern. I recently was in Poland. I've been at the Majdanek concentration camp, and I thought when I saw those barracks out there, it's just like the rows of chicken houses and hog houses you see here. There is no such thing as a humane concentration extermination camp, and that's what we have today. We're crowding too many animals in too small places. From an economic standpoint, it's not good for the consumers. We haven't seen the cost of meat, milk, eggs go down as we put them into the capos. And any increase or decrease we've seen in the farm level has been more than offset by the growing margin of people in the system. We've turned the control over the corporations, and they're taking any savings out for their shareholders rather than passing on to the consumer. We not see the rural economic benefits. The benefits go to corporations outside the community. In terms of public health, we need to face up to the facts, folks, that when we've got 2,500 hogs, we're putting out as much waste as with 7,500 people, and you can't just take the waste from 7,500 people and dump it in people's backyards. You got 400 cows, it's the same as 8,000 people. And we're just going to spread it in the fields and let it run into the streams. Folks, that's just not right. It's a public health risk, and we need to address it. There's new animal agriculture, there's new opportunities for the future. And that's what a lot of these folks are going to talk about. That's where I spend most of my time today, while here working with people that are doing these alternative systems. And there's plenty of them in animal agriculture as well as organic and biodynamic and other crops. There's free range, hormone, antibiotic free, grass-based, animal welfare raised. You can raise hogs in hoop houses. There's studies that have done, you can do it just as economically. And when we raise it in these alternative ways, the food is safe, it's produced in environmentally friendly ways, it's a humane treatment of animals, it's profitable for the farmers. I have opportunities to speak across the country. There's at least 12 conferences in this country today that will draw over 1,000 people a year. And these are young farmers and customers that are there. Upper Midwest organic growers have over 3,000 people. I just come from a conference small farm conference up in Michigan. Had over 1,000 small farmers that were in there. Out of Chico, California, on the Chico, California campus, the students put together a conference that focused on food. Over 1,400 people registered for it. There's a whole movement out here across the country. Folks, what we're talking about is a better way to farm, a better way to live, a better future for our country. Thank you very much.
We are the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce, an organization that's creating the business leaders of tomorrow. Catch our new television series, Harambe 101, on Green Time TV. We want to thank all the business professionals who gave up their time mentoring what promises to be the next generation of movers and shakers. You too can help save the future of our underserved communities by supporting the Junior Black Chamber of Commerce with your charitable contributions. And remember, what you give today will help make a brighter future tomorrow.
Send your donations to the JBCC at P.O. Box 35257, St. Louis, Missouri 63135.
The Sierra Club is the largest and most influential grassroots environmental organization in the United States. If you care about clean air, clean water, and preserving open space, join the Sierra Club. In Missouri, the Sierra Club's projects include promoting energy efficiency and clean power sources like wind and solar, cleaning up air pollution by retiring dirty, outdated, coal-fired power plants, protecting Missouri's parks like the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. We need you to get more involved. To join the Sierra Club, make a donation, or to find out about Sierra Club events in your area, visit our website at www.missouri.sierraclub.org or call us at 314-644-1011.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We just saw John Eckert talking at a conference, recent conference about food issues. With me, I have a guest who has studied the food issues very important for Missouri. His name is Wes Schumeyer.
Yes.
Wes Schumeyer. You're with Missouri's Food for America, right?
That's correct.
Now, what is that?
Well, when this issue came out, I was so moved that I formed a continuing committee that was specifically designed to oppose right to farm.
Well, why the right to farm? I mean, that is a initiative, which it sounds to me like Missouri farmers don't have a right to farm, but if this initiative passes, then you'll give people the right to form their family farm. Is that right?
No, actually, Don, right now, this is a constitutional amendment.
A constitutional amendment?
This is a constitutional change.
That's pretty big.
It's very big. And right now, family farmers enjoy those protections of right to farm through statutes. And a couple years ago, Proposition B came to the forefront. So some of the big ag folks saw this opportunity to make the HSUS the scapegoat and say we can't have outsiders.
HSUS?
Humane Society of the United States. We can't have outsiders playing in politics in the state, which I think it's kind of funny because HSUS has well over 200,000 supporters within the state of Missouri that voted. Prop B actually passed, if they remember. And of course, then the legislature modified that.
Was this the one that affected puppy mills?
Yes, that was it. And the legislature modified that initiative petition language with a constitutional amendment. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I worked with some guys who were. And the saying in Jeff City always was, "The Constitution trumps all." So any law that's on the books in the past, any law that will be passed in the future statutorily, can be challenged by anyone if it impedes on their right to farm. And so then you're going to decide what's a modern farming practice. The courts will have to decide that. So I suggest that those with the most resources will crowd the courts to get the decisions that they want that may be the most harmful to communities, maybe most harmful to the environment, because 99% of the farmers in the state of Missouri do not need this amendment.
Well, what would the amendment do? What would it accomplish?
Well, there's a number of things. If you are a corporation, and you kind of need to get in perspective what has happened in the state capitol the last year or so. Our legislature voted to allow foreign corporations to own our farmland.
Oh, really?
The governor vetoed that, and it was overridden in the legislative session. So it became law, and henceforth, immediately after, Smithfield was bought out by a Chinese corporation that was named Shinelo, which is now the WH Group. Okay. And so what this will do, it will give those same rights and protections that your family farmers and our family farmers within the state of Missouri that have been enjoying statutorily. And we'll give these foreign corporations that I'm sure don't care near as much about our communities, that don't have near as much patriotism, and then we'll be subsidizing most likely with our tax dollars for improvements to their land. And so we're giving them the same rights as we would give to any other citizen. And I just don't think foreign corporations should allow that.
So basically what the right to farm constitutional amendment would do is to give corporations, including foreign corporations, the same right
Yes.
as small family farmers would have.
Because they had been excluded statutorily in the past from these same rights and privileges. And so this will open the floodgate up, and I think it's what the proponents of it, talking about Prop B 2 years ago and others, what they're doing really is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know, if you don't like a decision how something works, get involved in a political process. Lobby the legislature. Talk to the governor, the Department of Agriculture. Find ways to make through the initiative petition process. See, this right to farm will negate the initiative petition process.
You wouldn't be able to change it.
You could do an initiative petition, but you got to remember that changes the statutes. It doesn't change the Constitution.
Okay.
So this is a big deal.
Okay. Why would family farmers and organic farmers be concerned about this?
Oh, or especially organic and sustainable farmers. You got to understand that would if Monsanto may want to become a farmer. And I think what we've seen in southeast Missouri with the rice farmers, where the GMOs have contaminated the rice for export, certainly they lost a huge market, and they had to go to court and sue to get some of their damages, which they only got like 15 cents on the dollar. So if someone comes out there and you're organic and you're trying to protect what's growing on your land, and someone else's intellectual property drifts over on yours and declines the value of your land, or let's say if...
So Monsanto would basically have the same right as a family farmer would have.
Sure,
And that would,
if they're a farmer, if they
wanted. Okay, and so that explains to us why Monsanto and other big corporations might be very interested.
Many big corporate. I think if you look at the list of folks that are stepping up for supporting the other side, Monsanto is one of those.
What about puppy mills? How this puppy mills are where people raise lots and lots of puppies, usually breeds instead of mixed breeds, and a lot of these puppies are not very healthy and are kept in not very good conditions, and a lot of people would like to put that out. Well, what does the right to farm have to do with that?
Well, you think the other side says we have to address this issue, and we can't have anybody telling us how to farm anyway, or shape or form in Missouri, even if it's very egregious and is harmful possibly to animals, or even more so if take a CAFO that impedes on someone else's right to enjoy their own property or sit on their porch.
A CAFO is a confined animal feeding operation, which has thousands and thousands of hogs or thousands of chickens at one place.
I think with the statute that's there now, and as we've seen the governor and the director of agriculture make a concerted effort to do enforcement and get the bad players out of the industry, henceforth leaving the good ones. We've done I think a good job on how we have cleaned that industry up in the state of Missouri, and earned a lot of respect around the country in doing so. What this right to farm will do is say, well, this is all statutory language, and so therefore these folks can go back to the courts and they can say that this could impede on the right to do with what they want on their land. It's a modern farming practice.
So basically puppy mills would be considered a farming practice, and people could do whatever they want to. Okay, let's hold that thought. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Since 1990, the Gateway Green Alliance has worked on environmental and social justice campaigns in St. Louis.
The Gateway Greens have brought dedicated activists to speak at Black and Green Wednesday programs, the annual Pesto Feast, Martin Luther King Day, May Day, and Kwanzaa celebrations.
The Gateway Green Alliance is best known for opposing genetically contaminated foods. We invite activists and scholars from around the world to participate in safe food action and bring their creative art.
We need your support to keep going. Please send your $60 membership check or your $30 low-income check. Best of all, come to a Black and Green Wednesday program, 7:30 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at Legacy Books and Cafe.
What if we were served a side of truth?
I'll take a super bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich.
Okay, that'll be meat from a pig who can't even turn around, an egg from a bird kept in a cage so small she can't spread her wings, and the milk of a cow whose calf is taken at birth to make veal. Ma'am?
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. I'm with Wes Schumeyer, who is with Missouri's Farm for America. Do I have it right?
Missouri's Food for America.
Missouri's Food,
but it comes from a farm.
Okay, food does tend to come from a farm. Now, we were just talking about the so-called right to farm, which we learned in the first half doesn't really give people the right to farm, which farmers already have. What it does, it gives corporations the rights, all of the rights that a small family farmer would have. Now, you were telling me that some interesting things were happening in the Missouri legislature, and particularly things that affect Article 6 of the Missouri Constitution. Now, I know that all of our viewers know exactly what Article 6 is, but why don't you review that for a second?
Well, I think this is an interesting part of the debate, because at the end of the day, with this passes, the only areas in the state that will be able to regulate agriculture will be first-class counties with a charter form of government and the city of St. Louis. So you'll have Jackson, St. Louis County, Cape County, and
the big cities.
The big cities. That's the only ones that will have the ability to regulate. And that was because an amendment was put on in the Senate by some of the city folks that said, hey, we want to make sure we still have the right to protect our, I guess, urban agriculture. So I think that's very ironic that all this rural area, we won't be able to do those things with, for instance, I live in northeast Missouri, and we had a large CAFO want to locate its lagoon within 900 feet of Mark Twain Lake, which is a water source.
The lagoon is a huge cesspool.
Oh, a huge cesspool. It's where all the effluents and manure go to from the thousands of hogs. Okay. And it was going to be within 900 feet of Mark Twain Lake. And that's a destination for a lot of people in St. Louis. And our county commissioner says, look, we're going to do a health ordinance and put a green zone around the lake because people's water is important. The environment is important. The recreation and the tourism is also important. So these things can be challenged, and those things can be thrown out because certainly it impedes on someone's right to farm, to do with what they want on their own land. And so it's one of those things that I've always said about agriculture. The 99% of the good and great farmers within this state do not need this. It's the 1% of those folks who would not mind being a bad neighbor, who have put more of profits over their community and more profits over the environment. So basically,
it would tell people who have a CAFO, a huge animal operation, that they could create these lagoons, and they could do all these things because they would have the same rights as a small family farmer.
Yeah, and setbacks, where right now we have some laws on setbacks with basically with sizes, so those things could be challenged in statute.
Okay, well, what does this have to do with my food?
Well, this could have significantly a lot to do with your food. I think, we talked about the the changing the law of foreign ownership of farmland within the state of Missouri.
Right, it's WH Group.
The WH Group now, it's a Chinese corporation, and I think there's an old saying that membership has its privileges, well, ownership has its privileges. The Chinese, this Chinese corporation now owns 27% of the pork produced in this country. And if you start thinking about you taking one pork chop out of every 4 that's sold in this country, I expect the ownership, they're going to want to export that into their market. There's a reason they bought that. And so, the prices of food could go up exponentially. And we already see some prices going up from disease and other things and shortages in that arena because of that. But, the other thing is, I think the people need to think, we do not need to be the dumping ground for China. They don't. 24% of their land is already overpolluted, and I'm sure their track record, with what they have, they're not going to be real concerned about what they leave in the community where they're at.
That wouldn't just be China. That would be just about any country. You tend to be
absolutely.
The farther you are away from some place, it's like the less you're likely to be concerned. And so we could very easily have Chinese and European and
absolutely
other corporations.
Well, I personally believe, and I've always believed this, that food and food security is a huge issue, and who's in control of that food is a huge issue. And I think with this, what we need to remember is that I think consumers, and especially millennials, deserve to know where their food comes from, deserve to know who produces it, and deserve to know that there is some sort of integrity. Like I raise antibiotic-free and hormone-free pork, and we raise cattle on grass, and we do a lot of clovers on our farm. And I think people deserve to know that animals are humanely treated, and they deserve to know these things about it, because animal husbandry is a practice.
Could I go by and visit your farm if I wanted to?
You'd be more than welcome.
If I wanted to go to a CAFO, could I go to a CAFO and see how the animals are treated?
Usually you have a hard time getting into one of them. They don't want you to see. You'd be welcome to come to see all my animals on my farm. They're happy.
Well, could I film animal treatment at a CAFO as easily as I could film your animals?
Oh, absolutely not. I think they have the ag gag laws that they've passed in Missouri 3 or 4 years ago, and of course you see them all over the country. I mean, if you're not proud of something and what you're doing, I don't understand why you think you need to hide behind ag gag laws. I think it should be open.
So this would even reinforce that even more.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, tell me what would happen for Missouri family farmers if this right to farm were to pass and become part of the Constitution?
Well, that's the ironic thing. Like I said, 99% of all family farmers do not need this. Okay. We have the right. It's in statute. I even have my little part in there from when I served in the legislature that basically protected those of us out there from urban sprawl, that said if someone moves in next to you, they have to put up with your sounds and sights and smells of your farm. And so we have so many of these protections already.
Would it be harder to actually preserve your farm?
Oh, absolutely, because you are giving the green light and you're giving access to government programs to many of these corporations that have been excluded, because our statutes now exclude corporations from the same protections as we as family farmers have. And now this WH Group out of China, which has bought 50,000 acres and now owns 27% of the pork in this country, they would enjoy the same rights and privileges.
And so since they're bigger, it might be easier for them to pressure.
Oh, sure.
Would it be fair to call this, instead of the right to farm initiative, the right to push small farmers off their land initiative?
I think it'd be fair to say that, and the right to push small communities and rural communities around, and the right to push your way through the court system, because you have the most lawyers and you have the most dollars in your pocket to challenge in the court system.
Okay, let me ask you this. How can viewers find out more about the right to farm, about the legislation? How can they find out about Missouri's Food for America?
Well, certainly Missouri's Food for America, we have a Facebook page, and it's Missouri's with an S, Food for America. And then we have a website that's Vote No on One.
Wes, I got to cut you off with that because I'm getting the wrap-up sign. I want to thank Wes Schumeyer with Missouri's Food for America for being on this episode with Green Time. I want to thank everybody for watching the show, and tune us in next week.